Hi, once again, I'm really excited to present this use case where I have used the example of a typical aviation navigation services organization, which handles the MRO, or I would say maintenance repair operations, in order to keep the aircrafts in very good condition. I would say optimum conditions, and the maintenance part and the repair part of the aircraft will definitely need some kind of a supply chain process, to take care of all the material flow. Now, when I speak about material flow, we are covering the demand part here. The demand planning and the inventory management part is done here. Inventory managing further connects with either you want to transfer the material within the distribution centers or from the central warehouse to the distribution center, or you can even create supplier requirements. For example, you can create requirements for purchasing the material. You can translate the purchase requisition into a purchase order through very precise approval matrix that are built in. And there are some automated workflows that I'll be speaking about. And one of the workflows is something that I'm going to create on the fly just to show you the power of automation here. And as you can see that throughout all the processes, there are reportings that are happening, and these reportings are basically translated with the help of scorecards or graphic visualizations. And this entire demand and supply use case is built on a cloud platform, and it eliminates the need to utilize spreadsheet and do a lot of manual work, and work in an environment which is not connected. So I'm really excited to start this, and I hope you like this use case. Let's get started quickly.
So we begin our supply chain planning process for this aviation navigation services company. We can see that there are two users and the users personas or the responsibilities of individual users are also mentioned here. So one of our user is a planner who is going to take care of forecasting, demand analysis for spares and non-spares items, and also manage the inventory and stock transfer plus distribution. The other user happens to be a buyer, and this user is going to take care of supplier allocation, mapping the material master. So mostly material master is already mapped in our platform. Then handle the purchase management from the requisition part till the approval part of the purchase orders, and also perform some supply analysis. Right. So let's begin. Process navigation is basically the navigation page that we have on this platform, which allows the users to move between different processes, starting from initialization, which means most of the central planning activities or pre-planning preparation will be performed by the user. Then we have some material classification walkthrough. We also have demand forecasting and planning. A lot of settings of forecasting will be performed here. Managing the inventory, transferring the orders between the distribution centers, and there's an approval workflow which is also available on this platform. We have some allocation and then moving to the purchase order post the approval, and finally some of the reporting with respect to variance and other analysis. Now, just to quickly touch base on some of the process initialization and administrative activities, we have got version controls. So I'm going to look at the version control along with you guys. So just to touch base at a very high level, our version settings will allow the users to define the actual period, then create a current focus. So all the versions can be created, edited, deleted from these two action buttons. And then we can also provide the switchovers for individual versions. This means that the current forecast that we are planning is actually starting from October period for the next 12 months. Any data that is coming before the switchover period automatically moves to the actuals, so we can have number of versions and perform analytics in terms of checking how our actual looks like compared to these versions that we have planned. Of course, we have the lock version options here so that editing can be eliminated, or we can control the editing part, which means no user can perform any changes or simulation on these versions. But since we are starting the planning exercise, these activities will have to be, or these versions will have to be unlocked for now, right? So let's move ahead and look at the planning calendar. Now, a planning calendar is helping us to understand the set of activities. These activities come from different heads of activities. So we have got some initialization of process, we've got some approval sign off processes, demand forecasting, which is a very important area that we are going to touch base in this presentation. And of course, other areas of the processes are also connected. Now, this Gantt chart will help the user to look at the review period and also the period throughout which this planning activity is going to be performed. Similarly, we can see that this activity starts from a particular date and ends at a particular date, and then final review happens here, right? So let me just minimize this part. And importantly, we have a button here which can allow the user to create any activity which is not a part of the process today. But in future, if the user wants to have an activity inserted, this button will actually open up in form of a user control form. And this user control form will help the user to put in all the necessary details that is required to create an activity. Now, we have got some historical data load management wherein the users can check whether the data is clean, whether there is any missing information. I would not touch into these areas because these are all hygiene checks. However, just to touch base this point that we also perform these hygiene checks before the data is moved for planning exercises. Now, approval matrix is a very important point here. We have an approval workflow established in this use case wherein there are several approval levels based on their approval limits. They will have an access to approve any specific transaction. So when I say transaction, these are some planned transactions like moving of material between different distribution centers or fetching the data, or I would say fetching the information of the available inventory and then moving the inventory or planning the inventory from central warehouses to distribution centers, right? This approval matrix will also help the users to move their purchase requisition from the PR creation till the PO approval stage. Now, we have got a very interesting piece here, inventory planning settings, which helps the users to put the number of days of inventory that the user wishes to keep in the inventory, or I would say the number of days of stock that the user wants to keep as a coverage. So minimum level and maximum level are the two levels here, but there are certain other levels also in the backend which will find the base, the optimum, and the maximum level of stock. And in between that, you have these period or the number of days. So your stock movement or the stock holding units are basically controlled between these levels of inventories. Now, these are editable options, by the way, so a user can on the fly make changes. The other important area on the central planning assumption or pre-planning exercises would involve a user to control the master data of the product. Now, master data generally need to have the ability for the users to add any product or product type, add any spare, which is a part of the product type, and even add a supplier on the fly. Now, these are different product family items, and the moment I click on individually on these items, I would see that my spare summary is very clearly mentioned here in this grid. And at the same time, my supplier is also appearing here. So once I click any particular spare, I would have my supplier, qualification of my supplier very clearly mentioned here. So let's say I want to have my cockpit system where there are two items. So one of the items I wish that I don't want to have a supplier, which is global communication, instead of which I would like to have Aerotech avionic solutions as a qualified supplier. I can just use these Boolean checks and perform this, selection. Now, at the same time, I would also have the ability to manage the lead time of this item for the supplier, right? So this allows the planning calculation to run the requirements based on the PRs that I'm going to create in the eventual part of the call, right? Now, we have got this MRP data which is coming in from my source system. So this is a scheduled, import that's happening on a scheduled time. That's why we've kept this connectivity between our source system as well as our consumption system. So our planning platform is the consumption system, which is consuming the information from the source systems, and then the backend calculation are taking care of the plans. Now, inventory input. We have got this inventory input wherein we can directly update the inventory. The moment I update the inventory, my source system will get my inventory on hand as on that period. And these are the items that we are going to look at in our planning environment. And I could see that my on-hand inventory coming from each and every distribution center, including the central Jeddah DC, which is my mother warehouse or the central warehouse, that also appears, right? At any given point of time, if I want to reset this information, I can just use the reset button. Now let's look at the demand forecasting part. We are going to perform the demand forecasting, but before we do that, we need to bring some settings or default settings in our forecasting engine. Uh, why don't we use a workflow, which is one of the features that generally helps the users to create some of the tasks or create a template where which can be edited as and when the tasks are to be performed. So we have got a task which is created, forecasting parameters setup, and this task is basically uh, asking the users to update the parameters of forecast settings. Now this task was created as a template a couple of days back, so let me just click on the edit template option. Now you would see that we have different types of tasks which can be performed through through this workflow. Now for this task we have got the settings already done. What we would do is we would select a page, and if I select this page, exactly on this page the user will land, which is my forecasting settings. Select this page, and I want to set a due date. So I want to have this done within 1 business day, right? I just publish this. Now this task is actually created and the user will see a workflow coming in. Now, if I click here, a workflow has been just completed as a message that I receive, right? But generally when I start a task, I just need to click a workflow. And when I click this workflow, I'll put some of the details here and just put some description here. Next, this is starting. Let's start the workflow. The moment I click the workflow, start option, a task was assigned to me, right? I just click this and I'll straight away jump on to, that page. Now, this is a very interesting page. And on this page, I would see that, there are some of the basic, I would say, settings are available. So this grid is telling me that there are items for which my forecast settings do not have any of the factors. So we have got several factors to run on the forecasting part, and I'll talk about the factors eventually at a very high level, because every forecasting requirement or every forecasting method needs some of the factors that goes inside the calculation, right? So I would see that items with errors appear here, which means that there are several items where the factors are missing. Now, if I use the update blank settings with defaults, it runs a process, and instantly I would see that all my factors have the default settings appear here. And these are editable cells, so I can change based on my understanding of the forecast factors. But I'll just keep the default settings, appear for each and every factor that I'm using. And this now brings me 0 errors. That means my task is completed. I'll just click on complete task, mention a note, and hit complete task. Now it tells me, do you want to go back to the page or do you want to go to the task inbox? It's better we go back to the application page, right? If I now look at the approval, which is basically a connected workflow to the completion of task. Now this task, which was completed by me, now also asks me to approve it. Since I'm the creator of the task, I am the assignee of the task, and I'm the approver of the task. Generally, all the three people will be different personas, will be different users. But just for the ease of understanding how this workflow works, I have kept myself in all the workflow steps. So now, after this task is completed, an approval matrix runs, and this approval workflow will allow the user to actually approve, reject, or send back, the request for task completion. For the ease of the use case, I'm just going to click on approve, mention my comment, and approve it. Now it'll again ask me to go to page or the inbox. Let's go to the page. So while we are discussing this, there are some notification bells which are appearing. So I'll show you where the notification is also hitting. One is the notification inside the application, and other is my Outlook. So you would see that my Outlook is, flooded with notification. That means every notification that is appearing on my application is being pushed also on my Outlook. Now I'll go back to the page. Now, once I'm done with the settings, I would also see that there are some interquartile range and multiples of interquartile, which are basically the default settings of running the forecasts. Now, I'll go to the period requirement analysis, right? I'll just click one of the items just to show you that there are viable methods which appear here, and all these methods, there are about 28 to 30 methods which we are using in the backend engine. And these methods, they need a specific number of time periods, and minimum number of time periods are mentioned here. So we have good amount of historical periods coming with the data. So we have a very good database that can help us to run through the forecasting engine, right? Now let's go ahead and look at outlier correction. In the outlier correction, I need to first find out my outlier. So let me go to one of the items coming from Abha DC, which is the avionics items. I would see that my history shows that these are the outliers, right? The three dots. Now this is historical data. I need to first correct my outliers to bring a stochastic or non-stationary information, and then my forecasting can continue in order to get me a smoothened forecast. Now I have got an option to select the method, whether I want to go with standard deviation or interquartile range. I'll stick to interquartile range, and then the number of IQRs multiple. I'll stick to 1.5. Let me bring the default settings here. And then I have got the default correction method. Now, do I want to bring the correction within the upper and lower limits, or do I want to go with any other options here, like average of previous periods or average of future periods? I'll stay with the upper and lower limits as my correction method. I use a single item, and then I go to single item outlier correction. A process runs, and you would see that instantly my outliers are corrected, right? Now, the other thing is I can choose the global outlier correction. This means that all the items that are under different outliers, or I would say the outlier settings are not corrected. So I would actually be choosing this option, global outlier correction, and then this allows all the items to stay within the outlier limits. I mean, within the upper bound and the lower bound limits. Now I have got my historical period here, which has helped me to correct the outliers, right? Now I'll move ahead with my statistical forecasting review. So that's my item and DC combination. This is my forward forecast looking like from the period from the period October 23 till September 24, right? Now I can still have further editing options of choosing the, overriding the best forecast method. So basically this engine allows the user to see the best forecast method here, and it does it automatically. So I just want to bring your attention to the descriptive statistic history range. So all the items are connected with their DCs, and you would see that the system is telling which is the best fit method based on the available data. And now if someone wants to override that best fit method, can choose this option, choose the override, option for checking what is the algorithm accuracy method that this engine is using. So I am checking my accuracy based on MAPE. If I want to choose something else, I have got RMSE and MAD as well, right? Mean absolute deviation. Now I will stay with my MAPE option, right? And I will continue to see my forecast here. So these are my next 3 months of forecast, and these are my next 12 months of forecast. If the user wants to further make manual adjustments here, the user can bring in those values here, right? Now, going ahead, I would look at forecast algorithm analysis. If I see my forecast algorithm analysis, it tells me what is the error that or the accuracy that I'm finding in each of the methods. These are the accuracy percentages, or these are the percentages of deviations that I'm finding, and I can still override and choose another accuracy method in order to see whether the other method of accuracy check, either MAPE, MAD, or RMSE, what is the biasness that I'm getting in each of these methods, and choose that particular forecasting technique. Now, this brings us to the next area where I want to bring in my demand forecast. All the forecasting is done. I'm just refreshing my demand forecast, and now if I look at my first item, which is avionics, I would see the same number of units that were forecasted, right? So if I want to override this, I can still do a bottom up planning. I can click the override forecast and I can enter the new values. And if I want to spread the 300 units throughout the next periods also, I can choose the override for the next periods, and I'll just right click and copy it across. So this is how instantly I can, simulate the forecast and even override the already calculated forecast by the system based on my, based on my qualitative analysis or my gut feeling or my best estimate, assuming that I'm in the system and I know the product movements a lot. So there are two ways of forecasting that we have seen. One is the quantitative method where the forecasting was performed by the engine, and the second was the qualitative method where we still went ahead, even after getting the forecast, we went ahead and simulated the numbers, got the best estimate, and we also did it at bottom up. So we are doing it at product level, at individual DC level. Now, similarly, I will have my non-spare demand planning outlook also, which has the same kind of features that I have. So I have got my master production schedule, I have got my MED demand, I've got my final forecast, and the baseline is now getting me the base value and other forecasts that I need to get in the system, because I cannot just run on baseline. My organization for this use case also looks at master production schedule and the other demand that is coming in from my orders and my other systems. So now what I should be doing is looking at the analysis part. So this tells me on my product family level, what kind of forecast am I running? This tells me based on the capital item or operation item. I mean, every item is segregated into two spare types, whether it is a capital spare type or an operation spare type. And I can even choose, whether I'm looking at my total demand or whether I'm looking at my forecasted demand. Now, take it down, I will look at the exact breakup of individual items, and it tells me what was my forecast demand, MED demand, and MPS demand. So that's a total of all. If I want to notify a planner, so at this point of time, I'm treating myself as a planner. I can just click on notify option, and this opens up an Outlook. And then I just click and go ahead and open the Outlook and put my message across. Right? I can notify this user. So you can see that my system is also integrated with my Outlook, and my Outlook, if I click the notify option there, I can have my users informed about the changes that I'm making, or just to communicate any kind of simulation that I perform. So let me go back to my platform, and now let's move ahead with inventory planning process. Material classification. Our materials are classified into ABC FMR, and further we are also looking at the VD classification. So always better control fast moving, moderate moving, and rare moving items. And in VED, we are classifying them as vitals, essentials, and desirables. So all the items based on their contribution to consumption or contribution to sales, we are looking at the historical values, and that's how we come across their contribution towards the consumption and the breakup of individual classification combination. Now, I will go ahead and look at my inventory control worksheet. This is a very interesting worksheet, right? So we got our inventory, which was in one of the processes. We imported the inventory from our source system. Uh, in this case, first let me just uncheck the maximum level here, just to show you how it generally appears. So I've got my item here, my DC here. At each item and DC level, I can do a quick inventory control check and also plan the inventory. Now here I would see that I've got options to select. So whether a user wants to go with minimum level of inventory storage or maximum level. Let's say that I will go with the maximum level for now. And if you recollect, my safety stock days is the 86. This is coming from the inventory classification step, which was here, inventory planning settings. And the number of days appear here. So these are the safety stock limits that I want to place. That means I have got no requirement, for inventory. But if I choose my current inventory to be zero, just for the sake of, looking at how it will look, if I have no inventory. So you would see that my requirement is now coming up. So this is the additional inventory that I require, right? Now, do I need to go ahead with internal transfer? So I'll click with internal transfer and first check how much of quantity do I need. So this is the quantity that I'm requiring. I can edit this and I'll say I need 1200. Now it is going to look at transfer from location. So I will say transfer it from central location. So I've got 5,000 units, more than 5,000 units available in my central warehouse. So it's good to go with a request to transfer from central warehouse. Now I also have a PR requirement. That means a purchase requisition can be created. So do I want to override this because I'm going to move majority of the stocks from my central warehouse? So I may not need 1,113 quantity in my PR. So why don't I quickly change this to 500 units, right? So this tells me this is my new PR quantity. This is my transfer quantity. This is the location from where I'm transferring. And this is the quantity that I'm transferring, right? Now, if I'm happy with this, before I move ahead and proceed with the transactions, let me show you that there is a very good visual which tells me on a period by period basis, how's my inventory going to move. So all the flow that you can see is the flow of inventory. Now, coming back to this case, all we need to do now is creating a transfer order. So I'll click on transfer order. A transfer order is created. Now let's go ahead and check the transfer order. So we have got a transfer plan here. So I've got it for October. Send it to, let's say, Abha from Central Jeddah, which is my central warehouse. And I'm just going to click on the refresh button. So this is the item that we had requested the system to create a transfer order for, right? Now I'm okay with this. If I want to add any other item in this transfer request, I can do that with the help of the user form. But for the ease of this use case, I'll just ignore this part for now. Now, if I'm satisfied with this, I'll go ahead and look at the transfer approval. Now, let's remember that transfer approval can be looked by those users who have the approving authority. For this use case, since I have the admin rights, I am wearing the hat of each and every user in the entire environment of planning. Now, I would see that to Abha, I have requested 1200 units. If I am okay as an approver, if I'm okay to give 1200 units, so let me just put 1200 here. I would see that 1200 units shows a Morse condition, which is green in color. If anything goes below 1200, let's say 1100, it'll show me a red dot, which is again a Morse condition, right? So let me put 1100 for now, and now I'll go ahead and move to supply and demand analysis. So you would see that this is a very interesting piece of, visualization, which tells me from October 23 till the next year, September. So 12 months of movement of goods. It gives me all these data sets, starting from total demand, open PO, PR, and all of this that you see, right? It also shows me what should be my safety stock level based on the safety stock number of days. What's the inventory that I should be holding for this item at this location, right? So of course, we are planning only for October right now. That's why, I'm crossing my safety stock limit. That means I'm planning for a very optimum level of inventory for now. Now, before I go to the next set of process, let me also show you that we have a very unique two-dimensional scalar graph, which is basically going to tell me for my total company, for all the products, for my entire year 23, how much of inventory movement has happened. So this is transfer in one dimension, and the other dimension is available at source. So it tells me what's available at source, what's transfer in bubble, and what's the amount or what's the quantity in terms of units that I'm transferring in, right? So now, of course, there are other visuals which will help us to understand how many new purchase requisitions have been placed at individual DC locations. So that's a very interesting piece of visual that can help us to analyze it further. Now, if I go to supply planning, which is where our second user or the user coming from the upstream side, the buyer is going to participate in this process. So supplier pricing, that's a very interesting piece. So here I have got multiple suppliers, and I could see that there are no missing prices till this supplier. But however, when I go to this particular supplier, I've got 74 items which do not have pricing. So I can click on request bid, and the moment I click on request bid, I would see that this particular bid can now be further requested by putting a comment, right? And now I would be able to see for this particular supplier how many items are being procured throughout. So there is a list which is holding most number of items that I procure from the supplier, and of course the unit of measures, the YTD volume, and the yearly spend that I could see here. Now all I need to do is I need to go ahead and look at my supplier portal pricing. So I can have my supplier portal pricing grid or the interface that matches exactly with the supplier portal. I can place that kind of interface here. I can create a grid here, and I will show you how the grid looks like. But before I move ahead, the moment I start clicking on individual items, I should be able to see my history, the quote of the quote history of pricing from individual suppliers of these items. Now let's look at supplier portal pricing, right? So I'm going to lock and submit the pricing that allows me to update the pricing for these items, right? So I've got AVS Pair Solutions. I can now start applying the updating the pricing. I can simply copy paste if the price remains the same, or I can even edit the pricing manually. I can choose the Incoterms agreed with the supplier, and I can choose the MOQs with the supplier wants. Now, this kind of interface can also be shared with your supplier. In case if your supplier, wants to have the access to this, your supplier can be brought inside the workspace, and your supplier can start updating the prices. And this is all controlled using user security. So your supplier should only be able to see the details of its own companies or the items that are connected in the item master towards its own company, right? So this is a very interesting piece wherein the interface allows users to put the comments. Supplier comments can also be placed in. So this is how you collaborate with your suppliers and bring your suppliers to add more value in your supply chain ecosystem. Now, allocation of supplier. Again, the buyer is going to allocate some of the items to suppliers based on the allocation percentage. So here's the allocation percentage. So 100% of this item, avionic components. This is the product family, by the way. It is broken down into 70 and 30% to these suppliers. You have got Precision Solutions, which is the only supplier for instrumentation. Only 5% is allocated. The moment you see anything less than 100%, you will see a red condition here. So if I change this to 100%, I'll see that the entire units are allocated to these suppliers for avionic components. All right. Now, this is again a bottom up. So this was a top down approach, and now top down is connected to bottom up. So now I can individually go inside, uh, the allocated demands, and then I can override them, and then I can override the demand also. So instead of 350, if I want to, let's say I want to override the next 5 months, and I want to say I need 500 units, and I would spread this, right? So this is how easily you can override the quantities, how easily you can simulate the values at your end, and you can allocate individually each and every spare using the bottom up approach.
Now, once this is done, I will go ahead and look at purchase request reviews and approval. So I've got these many purchase requisitions coming up, right? And every purchase requisition goes through several levels of approval. And these levels have their own approval limits and the number of requests, right? If I want to go ahead with individual approvals, I can, select the approval, select the, approval matrix or the level of approval, and I can, go ahead and approve individual items, where it is very easy for me to just mention the decision here, right? And go ahead and put my comments and then finalize the approval, right? However, I also have an option to approve all, right? Once I click on approve all, there are no requests pending from this particular supplier. I'm sorry, this particular planner. Now, I can similarly get the approvals done for other users also. The users can, as per their approval limits, the users can, go through each and every line of the PR. Yeah, look at their limits, and then just simply click on approval option. And once, I've just done for the first two approval levels, you can see that the approval decisions is completed. You can do it for all the levels of approval, and you can simply go to finalize approvals. All the approvals which we have, executed for the first level and the second level are done. Now our time is to move ahead with the purchase order report. Now, in the purchase order report, we would see that approved request as 362. This comes from the first and the second level of approval, right? So I would say under review and upload purchase orders. All the items which are under review now are appearing as purchase orders, right? All the POs are created. These are the PO numbers created by our system. And these PO numbers can actually be mapped with your source system POs. Now I can put my comments here as a requester as an approver and straight away notify the user. Now the approver will be notified using the same technique that we did for the notification which we sent to the planner, wherein the notification will activate the Outlook and the email will be sent to the respective recipient. Now, the other way to also collaborate with the users within the system is using the collaboration function. Now, that function comes, as a native feature called comments. Now, I can choose a comment to any grid or any visual, and I can just call that particular user. This acts like a social media handle. All POs approved from L1 and L2. Now this user will receive a notification in his workspace, since he's a part of the same workspace that we are using inside the application. At the same time, this will reach him use with the help of an Outlook email, right? So I'll just close this. Now it's our time to look at some reporting. We start with variants. We have got current version and budget 23. So we will look at how the budget looks like, how the current version looks like, and we can simply select any other version that we want to go with, right? We want to check our actuals and our budget. We can perform that. We can look at the variance of demand based on the planning type, based on the product type, based on the different versions, based on the product families, and by category. We'll also look at demand variance by individual product. This is a very interesting piece where product by product. So you can actually look at forecast variance. You can look at MPS variance, or you can just simply go to total variance. And you can individually select how your DCs are looking like or how your central warehouse looks like, right? Now, even the supply analysis, could be brought in the application. So we've brought this supply variance analysis for individual products, individual categories, and summing up to product families also. And looking at the version, any two versions that we have selected here, we are seeing the variance based on supplier allocation, right? Now, the next set of reporting is the management reporting. Management reporting pack is, a pack which eliminates the need to have an additional PowerPoint presentation. It helps the users to bring in the right set of content, and visualization. So we look at demand analysis. Now there is a drill down option. We can look at individual DCs or aggregate to the entire value chain. We can have the differentiation between planning and non-planning parts. We can choose the version. We can take a look at whether we want to see capital items or operational items. We can choose individual products. We can even go with the period selection, and we can choose the type of demand series that we are looking at. Are we looking at total demand? Are we looking at any other kind of demand that we are using for the analysis? Now the next page will help us to look at supply versus demand visibility. Now interestingly, these texts are dynamic in nature. They change based on the selections we are doing. Now forget about the selections. Why don't we actually touch the individual labels from the y-axis? So I will touch on a particular item, and you will see that the dynamic text is getting changed quickly. Similarly, I can choose any other item from the below visual, and I would see that changes are still appearing. Now, the third set of visual is telling us the health indicator of our inventory. So our inventory stays at the stock out, the minimum level, the base or optimum level, and the maximum level. Now, if I look at my inventory for all products for the year 23, all right, current version is fine and all distribution centers. Now I would see that these are the level of inventories. Now to look at individual periods, I would see my periods by clicking on the labels of the time scales, and I should be able to see how my inventory looks like throughout this period, right? What level of inventory do I hold? This is like an inventory health meter. Now I'll just press escape to come out of this. And last piece is the supplier performance. Now we have this, one page deck or one page slide, which is again coming from the reporting deck. Now, here I can see my supplier performance in a nutshell, how the historical performance of my supplier has been, right? So I have my FY21 here. I can choose a particular supplier and I can look at the supplier's historical performance. So I'll just press escape and I'll go to the user personas or the process navigation. Keep watching this space for more because we are going to come up with more such interesting use cases. We built this and many such requirements of different planning domains on cloud enterprise planning solutions. And in case if you have any query on bringing such kind of models, such kind of use cases for your use in your organization, in your supply chain, we are just a ping away. Thank you very much.